Welcome to the deep dive. So you've sent us this really detailed guide from an image science printing service.
Yeah, it's all about getting your digital files ready for fine art printing.
Exactly. If you're looking to get what's on your screen turned into, a proper physical print, this is the place to be. Our mission, like always, is to sort of cut through the jargon, pull out the really key bits of knowledge.
Get you up to speed quickly.
Right. We want you feeling confident, like you really get what matters for those prints, and importantly, not overwhelmed. This is your fast track to being print ready.
Absolutely. And this guide, it's packed with practical stuff. If you want your digital art to become, a real tangible thing, understanding these specs is, well, it's essential.
It seems straightforward, but I guess the devil's in the details.
That's it, exactly. Miss one or two of these technical points, and it can really throw off the final print. Big time.
Okay, let's dive in then. First up, the core file specifications. They say RGB only. A definite no to CMYK.
Yep. Big point, that one.
And then they really hammer home the importance of ICC profiles. sRGB, Adobe RGB, ProPhoto RGB are the ones they list. So why are these profiles so critical? What's the key thing here?
Okay, so the crucial thing to get is that for accurate color, your file and the printer, they need to speak the same color language.
Okay.
And these ICC profiles, they're basically the translators. Think of RGB and CMYK as different color worlds, right? RGB on your screen usually has more color possibilities, like a bigger box of crayons.
Right.
Printers use CMYK inks, cyan, magenta, yellow, black. The ICC profile is like a universal dictionary that tells the printer exactly how to translate the specific RGB colors in your file into its CMYK ink mix.
So without it, the printer's just guessing.
Pretty much. Yeah, it makes its best guess, but that guess might be way off from what you saw on your calibrated screen. You could get weird color shifts, dullness.
Yeah, got it. Universal translator for color. Makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, next. Flattened TIFFs, or high-quality JPEGs only.
Right.
They specifically say no PDFs, PNGs, AIs, or EPS files for direct printing. Why so strict on the format?
Well, this really boils down to the fundamental way these printers work. They lay down ink based on a grid of tiny individual colored dots, pixels.
Like a mosaic.
Exactly like a mosaic. And raster formats like TIFF and JPEG are just that, a map of colored pixels. Simple.
Okay.
Formats like PDF, though, they can be complicated. They might contain vector elements, shapes defined by math, not pixels or multiple layers, fonts, all sorts of things printers can't directly handle.
And PNGs. They're pixel-based, aren't they?
They are, but they often have transparency, like alpha channels, which printers don't always interpret correctly for fine art output. And AI, EPS, those are mainly vector formats. You can convert them to pixels, but it's much safer if you do that conversion properly first and just send the finished pixel file.
So the key is giving them a simple, unambiguous grid of colored dots.
Precisely. No room for error or misinterpretation by the printing software, just the final pixels.
Okay, simple is best. Then, bit depth. 8 or 16-bit is okay, they say, but no HDR or 32-bit files. What's bit depth again, and why the cutoff?
So bit depth. Think back to that crayon box metaphor.
Okay.
An 8-bit image has 256 shades for each primary color, red, green, blue. That's millions of colors total, the standard.
Right.
A 16-bit image has thousands of shades per color. Way more subtle variations possible, smoother gradients, more editing headroom.
So why not even more, like 32-bit HDR?
Well, most professional printing workflows and even the file formats themselves, like standard TIFFs and JPEGs, are really optimized for 8 or 16-bit HDR, 32-bit. They contain a huge amount of tonal information, often far more than a physical print on paper can actually show.
So the printer literally can't reproduce all that extra information anyway.
Exactly. And processing those huge files can be slow or problematic, so sticking to 8 or 16-bit ensures compatibility and, efficient printing without losing anything visually significant in the final print.
Gotcha. More crayons than the printer can use.
Yeah.
Makes sense. They also say layers must be flattened. No embeds, extra layers, alpha channels, smart objects, fonts. Basically strip it all down.
Yeah, think of it like you're sending them the finished baked cake, not the recipe and ingredients.
Good analogy.
All those extra things layers, smart objects, live text with fonts, they're part of your creative process, right? But for the final print file, they're unnecessary baggage. They can even cause errors if the printer system doesn't have the right font or interprets a layer mode wrongly.
And alpha channels.
The
transparency thing?
Yeah, transparency needs to be resolved, either filled with a color or removed. Flattening the image merges everything you see into one single layer of pixels. Again, it's about providing that unambiguous final image.
Okay, final and flat. Got it. They reiterate, Raster bitmap only, no vector again, just to be sure.
Can't stress it enough, apparently.
And then size tags must be correctly set, and the image needs to be within the safe, printable areas. This sounds like where the digital meets the physical, right?
Absolutely. The size tags embedded in your file, the inches or centimeters and the resolution, tell the printer how big you intend the final print to be.
And the safe, printable areas.
Right, that's crucial. Think about how a printer holds onto the paper. There are always margins, edges where the print heads might not reach perfectly or where rollers grip the paper. The safe printable area is the zone inside those margins where they guarantee your image will print correctly without getting cut off or smudged by the mechanism.
So anything outside that zone is risky.
Very risky. Could be clipped, could be unprinted. That's why they mentioned downloadable templates. Using those is a really good idea because they visually show you exactly where those safe boundaries are for each paper size.
And building on that, they recommend placing your image on a canvas that's the actual physical size you want the final print to be. Good way to visualize.
It really is. It helps you see the proportions, the white space, everything before you even send the file.
They also mention no borderless full bleed prints directly. We sort of touched on this, but it seems important. Why can't they just print to the edge?
It's a common question. True full bleed printing, where ink goes right to the paper's edge, is often done by printing on larger paper and then trimming it down. With fine art printers and delicate papers, printing right to the edge risks ink smudging, paper handling issues. It's just technically difficult to do cleanly and consistently.
So that safe printable area essentially forces a small white border.
Exactly. It's a built-in minimum border. If you absolutely must have that edge-to-edge look, their workaround is order the print on a larger paper size than you need.
And then trim off the white edges.
Right. But, and this is important, they warn that doing this makes the ink right at the new edge more vulnerable. It can chip or scratch more easily during handling or framing because it wasn't sealed by a bit of uninked paper border.
Okay, so possible, but handle with care.
Very much so. They advise against it unless it's really necessary for the artwork's presentation.
And if you do need trimming, whether for borderless or just sizing, they're very specific. You have to provide trim lines, not just the standard Photoshop trim marks or a box drawn around it.
Yeah, they need clear, unambiguous lines showing exactly where to cut. Software trim marks can be small, easily missed, or misinterpreted by their cutting equipment. A simple stroked box is also not precise enough. Actual lines extending past the cut area are best.
No vague instructions like trim 1 centimeter off each side.
Definitely not. That's asking for trouble. Provide clear lines or use their setup service, which we'll get to.
Okay, let's talk resolution. This is always a big one. Ideal. 360 ppi, standard 300 ppi, minimum 180 ppi.
Right.
And a big, bold, do not resample. What's the deal with PPI and why is resampling forbidden? What's the key insight?
Okay, the absolute key insight here is work with the pixels you have, don't try to invent new ones.
Okay.
PPI is pixels per inch. It's how densely the pixels from your digital file are packed into each inch of the physical print. More pixels per inch generally means a sharper, more detailed print, especially up close. 300 to 360 is often considered ideal for high-quality photographic prints.
And resampling.
Resampling is when you use software, like Photoshop, to change the total number of pixels in your image. Usually, people try to increase the pixel count to hit that 300 ppi target for a larger print size.
Sounds like a good idea.
It sounds good, but it's usually not. The software has to guess what color the new invented pixel should be based on the surrounding ones. This process, called interpolation, almost always softens the image, makes it look blurry, or introduces weird artifacts. You're basically degrading the original data.
Oh, so you're faking resolution you don't actually have.
Exactly. It's almost always better to print slightly smaller at the image's native resolution or accept a slightly lower PPI, down to their minimum of 180, which can still look good from a normal viewing distance, than it is to resample upwards and damage the image quality.
That's a really important point. Don't fake it. Oh, and they also recommend using Save As or Save a Copy in Photoshop, not the export function. Why is that?
That's another good practical tip. Sometimes the export As, or save for web dialogues in software, can apply hidden compression or even resample automatically or strip out metadata like the color profile depending on the settings. Save As, or save a copy, usually gives you more direct control over saving the file exactly as it is, especially making sure that profile gets embedded.
Which leads perfectly to the last core spec. You absolutely must embed ICC profile when you save. We talked about profiles earlier, but why is embedding it right at the end so vital?
Embedding is the final step that locks in that color translation we talked about. It attaches that specific color dictionary, sRGB, Adobe RGB, whatever you use directly to the image file itself.
So the file carries its own instructions.
Precisely. When the print service opens your file, their software reads that embedded profile and knows exactly how you intended the colors to look. It overrides any default assumptions their system might make. Without the embedded profile, it's back to guesswork, and your carefully adjusted colors might go out the window.
Okay, that makes total sense. Fail to embed, and all that color work could be wasted.
Could be, yeah. It's a small checkbox when saving, but it has a huge impact.
Right, so that covers the nitty-gritty of the file specs. Now, the guide talks about file setup options. Looks like they give you 3 choices: self-setup, automatic best fit, and a paid file setup service.
Yeah, basically different levels of involvement for you.
Self-setup sounds like their preferred option.
It seems to be, yeah. And honestly, it gives you the most control. Self-setup just means you take responsibility for making sure your file meets all those specs we just went through. Color space, format, resolution, flattening, embedded profile, sizing within the safe area.
Using those templates they provide.
Exactly. Those templates are key for self-setup. If you're comfortable in Photoshop or similar software, this is the way to go to get precisely the result you want, the exact image size, the exact border width.
Okay, control freak option. Got it. Option 2, automatic best fit. They say they'll take your image and just size it automatically to fit as large as possible within the safe print area.
Right, no stretching, no cropping. They just scale it down proportionally until it fits inside those safe margins.
Sounds easy. What's the catch?
The catch is you don't control the exact final dimensions or the resulting white border. It'll fit, it'll look like your image, but maybe the print area ends up being, 10.3 inches wide instead of the 10 inches you wanted. And the border might be uneven if your image aspect ratio doesn't perfectly match the safe areas ratio.
So quick and easy, but less precise. Good if you're not too fussy about exact measurements.
Exactly. If you just want the biggest print you can get on that paper size without hassle, it's a good option.
Then option 3, the file setup service. Costs $5 a file. You send them your image, clear instructions, and they set it up for the specific size, layout, or border you need.
Yeah, this is the let us handle it option. It's great if you're maybe not super confident with the software, or you just don't have the time, or you want a specific border, like, say, exactly 1 inch all around, but don't want to mess with canvas sizing yourself.
So for $5, they take care of the technical setup based on your instructions.
Right. You just need to give them clear instructions. They do note, though, that this is for basic setup sizing, bordering. If you need really complex stuff, like multiple images laid out on one sheet, that falls under retouching services and would cost more.
Good distinction. And crucially, they say you must tell them which option you've chosen when you order or upload.
Yeah, that makes sense. Otherwise, they don't know whether to expect a perfectly ready file or one they need to adjust automatically or one they need to set up manually based on notes. Telling them upfront avoids delays and confusion.
Totally. Okay, let's dig into paper sizing and those safe printable areas a bit more. They break it down. Sheet prints, roll prints.
Right. So for standard sheets A4, A3, A3 plus A2, they give the specific millimeter dimensions for the safe printable area on each one.
And the key thing seems to be those minimum white borders again. 5 millimeters on the long side, 15 millimeters on the short side.
Exactly. That just reinforces that you can't print edge to edge directly on these sheets. You will have a border, and those are the minimums required for the printer to handle the paper safely.
Okay. And for bigger prints, larger than A2.
That's where the roll prints come in. They offer 24-inch and 44-inch wide rolls. Good for panoramas or just large pieces. Pricing is apparently in 5 increments of roll length used.
More flexible, but still margins, right?
Oh, yeah. The safe printable width isn't the full roll width. It's 57 centimeters for the 24-inch roll and 107 centimeters for the 44-inch, so you still lose a bit on the sides for handling.
Gotcha. They also make a specific point about A1 size.
Yeah, they note that an A1 print, which is 23.4 by 33.1 inches, is typically printed on the 24-inch roll, often resulting in a print that's actually 24 by 35 inches or so.
So not quite a true A1.
Not precisely. You'd likely need to trim it down to get the exact A1 dimensions, which brings us back to needing those trim lines if you want them to do it.
Right, it all connects. They also mention A5 prints, saying they print 2 on an A4 sheet and cut them.
The key there is you have to order A5s in pairs, basically ordering a full A4 print job, and you need to check their specific A5 setup guide for how to lay out the 2 images correctly with the right cutting margin between them.
So don't just send a single A5 file.
No, sounds like that won't work. You need to submit the paired up A4 layout.
And they even cover a specialty material, Ilfitex,
Hmm.
self-adhesive fabric.
Yeah, on a 42-inch roll, printed in half-meter lengths, with its own safe width of 100 centimeters. Just shows they handle different things and each has its own rules.
Good to know the detail is there if you need it. Let's loop back quickly to borderless printing. We know the workaround is print bigger and trim,
Right.
but they really seem to want people to think twice,
Yeah.
emphasizing the risk of damage to the ink on those cut edges.
Yeah, they're being upfront about the potential downsides. Ink right at a raw edge, especially on matte fine art papers, is just more susceptible to flaking or scratching than ink protected by even a small paper border. They're managing expectations and advising caution.
It's about print longevity, really.
I think so. If you do need it and need them to trim, again, provide proper trim lines or pay the $5 fee for them to add the lines based on your instructions.
Which flows right into their trimming services. Simple trimming, like 4 straight cuts to size 1 image, is free if you provide the right kind of lines.
Correct. Must be their recommended style of trim lines, not just any marks. And again, no vague instructions.
But for complex stuff, multiple images on a sheet needing separation, or really precise custom shapes.
They say, nope, that's not for them. They recommend a professional framer for that kind of complex or high-precision cutting.
And they're quite honest, saying their cutting equipment isn't as hyper-accurate as a framer's guillotine might be. Slight variations can happen.
Which is fair enough. A print studio's primary job is printing. While they offer trimming as a convenience, they're acknowledging that for absolute critical precision needed for certain framing styles, a dedicated framer with specialized equipment is the better bet. It's good, honest advice.
Sets realistic expectations. Now this is interesting. A true advanced black and white mode.
Yeah, that's a cool option for monochrome work.
They say it's a special mode specifically for neutral black and white prints. You have to ask for it specifically in the order notes or file name.
Right. Otherwise, if you just send a black and white image, they'll likely print it using their standard color printing process.
And what's wrong with that?
Well, sometimes when using color inks, CMYK, to create shades of gray, you can get subtle, unwanted color casts, maybe a slight greenish or magenta tint in the grays, especially under certain lighting. This advanced B&W mode probably uses a dedicated set of just black and gray inks, maybe with some clever use of a light color ink purely for toning control. The goal is perfectly neutral grays and deep blacks without any color shift.
So if you're serious about your black and white, you need to flag it.
Absolutely. Explicitly request it to ensure you get that pure and neutral monochrome result they're offering. They link to an article with more detail, which sounds worth reading if you print B&W.
Good tip. They also mention providing ICC profiles, if you ask, for soft proofing. But big warning, do not convert your images to these profiles yourself before sending.
Yes. Very important distinction. Soft proofing profiles are designed purely for previewing on your calibrated monitor. They simulate how the colors might look on a specific printer-paper combo.
So you use it in Photoshop's proof setup.
Exactly. You view your image through the profile, but you don't actually change the image file itself. Actually, converting your image to the printer's output profile beforehand is usually destructive. It throws away color information that the printer's advanced RIP software could potentially use better.
So keep the image in your working space, sRGB, Adobe RGB.
Embed that profile and let their system handle the final optimized conversion to the printer's specific profile. They also note they have separate profiles for color and for that advanced B&W mode, which makes sense.
Right. Keep your original data rich.
Okay, here's something practical I might not have thought about. Print alignment and skewing.
Yeah, the realities of physical materials. They say perfect alignment is almost impossible because fine art paper can shift slightly as it goes through the printer.
Especially textured papers or thicker stocks, they don't always track perfectly straight.
So a little bit of skew, the image being slightly slanted on the paper can happen.
It can. And because of that possibility, they recommend leaving more than just the minimum required white space around your image. Maybe 2 centimeters or more, especially if it's going into a mat or frame where alignment is critical.
Gives you some wiggle room for trimming or matting later if things aren't perfectly square.
Exactly. A practical tip born from experience, I bet.
Make sense?
Yeah.
What about test prints? How do they handle those?
They say they treat them exactly the same as a regular order. Same printer, same inks, same paper, same quality control.
So it's a 100% accurate proof of what a final print will look like.
Seems so. And apparently you don't even need to tell them it's just a test print, unless maybe you want specific advice on it. It just goes through the normal process.
Good to know they take tests seriously. It's a crucial step for important work.
Definitely. And if you needed help setting up that test file, you could still use that $5 file setup service for it.
Right. Okay, finally, the actual ordering process. Looks straightforward. Place the order online first. Add any notes.
Yeah, specifying paper type, size, quantity, that B&W mode if needed.
And then, separately, you upload your prepared files via their uploader tool.
Right. Keeping the order info and the file upload distinct probably helps them manage workflow and link the right files to the right order instructions. 2 clear steps.
Okay, so wrapping this all up, the big overarching message seems to be careful, precise file preparation is absolutely key.
Yeah, it's not just about the art itself. It's about technically preparing it so the printer can reproduce it faithfully. It prevents delays, avoids disappointment.
Understanding those specs, RGB, TIFF, JPEG, flattened, resolution, embedded profile, safe areas, is crucial.
It really is the foundation for getting good results.
And you've got those clear choices for how to handle the setup. DIY with self-setup for total control.
Using their templates.
Automatic, best fit for speed and simplicity if exact size isn't critical.
Or the file setup service for a bit of paid help with specific requirements.
So you can choose based on your comfort level and the project's needs.
And it's great they offer resources like the templates and seem open to questions, providing ICC profiles for proofing. They want you to succeed.
Definitely seems that way. So maybe a final thought for you listening. As you prepare your next image for print, really think about that connection between the digital file, all that data, the pixels, the color profiles, and the final physical object.
Yeah, understanding these technical steps, it doesn't just make you better at printing, does it? It kind of deepens your appreciation for the whole journey, from screen to the tangible artwork you can actually hold.
A nice bridge between the digital and the real world. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us.